we are here with Brian Clayton. Brian is the founder and CEO of GreenPal, the app often called the Uber for lawn care, who went from mowing lawns as a teenager to building and selling a $10 million landscaping company, and now runs a $30 million tech platform connecting hundreds of thousands of homeowners with lawn pros while bringing AI and automation into one of the oldest industries in America. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Brian.
Eric, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so we're thrilled to be able to have you on. It's amazing to be able to chat with you and to hear you're in Nashville. There's some great things that I hear in regards to Nashville's economy and how it's just so bustling and a lot to do down there. It's a difficult market to break into the real estate. I was kind of chatting with you about that. And so primarily that's where I generate most of my income from. It's the real estate investing industry. And so you know firsthand about that because you've invested in real estate as well along the way. But yeah, I mean, overall, it sounds like a great place to live and also a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, I was lucky to have grown up in a market like Nashville. I think your town, your city, where you start your first business, where you grow up matters because it kind of is like the wind at your back. And my first business was a landscaping business, was a lawn care business. And as I was growing that business, new shopping centers, new neighborhoods, new apartment complexes, new office buildings were being built all around me. And I knew that these people needed a landscaping contractor. And so there was kind of more shots on goal. It wasn't easy, but it definitely made it more, I guess, more doable versus if you're in a dead town that doesn't have new construction, new vibrancy going on, that can make it like chewing glass. And so for me, I guess I was very lucky to have grown up in Nashville because I kind of grew alongside the town.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then on top of that, it also helped to have a dad to kind of push you along the way there. It sounds like you've got a really interesting story on how your father nudged you on to go out and cut some yards. And it sounds like you just kind of took it from there. If you could just enlighten the listeners on that and how your dad was key toward leading you towards the landscaping business.
Yeah, it wasn't like I was a natural born entrepreneur and I was naturally motivated to start my first business. The truth is my dad got tired of watching me play Super Mario Kart all day. This was like 1994 and I was just glued to the Nintendo all day long. And he tried to lead me in the right direction and then that wasn't working. And so then he forced me. He forced me to go mow the neighbor's yard one day. He said, "Hey, get off your butt." I talked to the neighbor. They need somebody to mow their yard and you're going to do it. And I said, "Dad, I don't know how to mow a yard." He said, "Well, I'll show you. And you're in the lawn mowing business now." And so he made me go cut the neighbor's grass. And I hated every second of it. But then something magical happened. I got paid $20 for an hour of work. And there was a pair of soccer cleats that I really wanted to buy. And I thought, if I can just do this 4 more times, I can get those. And that just made sense to me. So I remember I went to my old school desktop computer and made a bunch of flyers and started passing them around the neighborhood. And sure enough, got 5-10 customers that first summer and just never looked back. It was like multiplication with that little business, just growing it little by little, one level at a time. And eventually it got to over 8 figures in sales and it was acquired by a big national company about 15 years later.
Wow. Yeah. So that's interesting. I love to just kind of chat on that. So you got your start with cutting a few yards, earning a couple of dollars extra and being able to pick up some nice items and things like that. And so what was the growth cycles like? Because in entrepreneurship, you're always having the most difficult time initially getting things off the ground. And that's where most founders, they struggle the most is trying to get that traction, trying to get the business to start up. What was it like for you? And just kind of talk us through those early days on picking up a few customers to the different growth stages leading up to you beginning to start getting some serious traction.
Yeah, it almost is like a video game. It's like one level at a time. And as a founder, as a small business owner, you just focus all of your intensity on the given level that you're at to get to the next level. And you don't worry about level 9 when you're on level 2. And that's kind of how it was for me with that first business and my second company, GreenPal. It has been every level had its own set of challenges, and every level kind of had its own final boss, so to speak. And then you beat that level, and then guess what? The next level's got its own set of problems. And a lot of times as a founder, you think that, okay, if I can just get this couple of customers and hire this one person and do this one thing, then that life will be good for a while. And the reality is that you solve those 3 problems, that means you get 3 more to solve. And it never ends. It is always a series of new challenges, and it's a never-ending game and an infinite game. And that's how it was with me building my first company and been building my second company is that every level has its own unique challenges, has its own things you must learn how to deal with and learn how to master. And that was the thing with the first business was, maybe the first level was just getting my first 10 customers and making, a couple $100 a week. And then level 2 was, okay, now I've got more business than I can personally handle. And now I need to hire an employee. And that's a tough level. It's like, okay, your first employee, it's like you're doubling your business with one decision, because now it's like your output has doubled. And so, I did that wrong and lost money. My employee was making more money than I was making for like several months. And so figuring that out. And level 3 might have been, okay, well, now we're not just a couple of kids mowing grass. We actually now have a real business. And when you think about a couple of processes and routines and marketing, because maybe now I can hire 3 or 4 of these people. And it's just working through one level at a time, not worried about, when you're on level 3, you're not worried about things like, well, what is my HR policy? And what does the brand look like? And what is our company culture? And those things matter at maybe level 7. But when you're on level 3, you just focus on, okay, how do I make money on a unit economic basis? Meaning, like, what is the output of the business, and how do I repeat that over and over again? For us, it was labor hours. Essentially, we were selling labor hours. When you're in a service-based business, that's what you're selling. And so I had to kind of figure out how I made money at a unit economic level at 16 years old, running a lawn mowing business.
So that's really, I love how you frame that. And so you said it's similar to a video game, and you meet a challenge, you figure out how to beat that challenge. And so that sounds really simple to do, but there's so many failing businesses that they fail, they crumble in that stage, in which they're trying to get off the ground. They're trying to get and gain some traction. But they meet challenges, and instead of beating that level, they crumble, or they maybe fund it for a while, and get about 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road, and then they implode at that point in time. So what was the strategy that you would do to solve those problems? So was it that you had a certain day out of the week in which you strategize during this day only, or was it while you were actually building a business, you were just kind of forward thinking and solving problems while you were actually taking care of the business? What was the strategy that was working for you?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Was there a certain day of the week? That's a really good way to think about it, because when you're starting a new business and running a small business, it's a 7-day-a-week thing. It's a full contact sport. It is all of your output as a human being to will that business into existence. And so I did look at it as certain days of the week were for certain things. Even back then, I kind of had that intuition to say, okay, I'm just trying to keep my head above water through the week. And it's like, I need to set aside time on Saturday and Sunday to do these other things. And the way it makes sense to me looking through the rear view with building my first landscaping business and with building GreenPal is that there's 3 buckets as a founder that you're always kind of working in and on. And so the first bucket is you're working in the business. And that is very much like you are self-employed. You are making sure customers are getting taken care of. You're making sure that you're hustling up deals, hustling up business. You're making sure people are getting paid. There's enough money in the bank. You're working in the business. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. And they're really just kind of self-employed in that way. They've bought themselves a nice job. The next bucket is you're working on the business. And this gets talked about in the book called The E-Myth, which is a really good book about this, working in the business, working on the business. And in that bucket, you're working on, okay, how do I get out of self-employed land and get into business ownership land? And that means you are doing things like, what is my marketing routines and systems and processes? What is my customer service kind of routine look like? And how do I deal with certain things? What does my employee training system or routine look like? And if you got one or two helpers, you got to figure out a way to repeatedly train them. And on and on and on. And all of these systems that go into running a business, that you're working on the business. Maybe that's a Saturday activity in the early days. And then the third bucket is you're working on yourself. Nobody teaches us how to run a small business. Nobody teaches us things like leadership. Nobody teaches us basic accounting, copywriting, marketing, all of these things that go into running a successful business. You, as the founder, have to get pretty darn good at, because you have to know how to delegate these things, and you have to know about what quality looks like and what kind of team members you're looking for to recruit to your mission. And you have to set aside time for that. For me, that's a Sunday thing. And so you're reading books, you're listening to podcasts, you're going to YouTube University, you're going to conferences, you're doing all of these things to develop your skills, because nobody teaches us how to do this, and we have to learn it as we go, and you have to set aside time to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And so 3 different buckets, just full steam ahead, working in the business, working on the business, and then working on leadership. And so do you feel like in the initial getting the business off the ground, all 3 of those buckets need to be tended to?
So that's a great question. So if it's just you and you're trying to hustle up your first 100K, probably 95% of your time needs to be in the business. You're doing 2 things. You're building a product or service, and then you're getting people to use that product or service. It's basically those are the 2 only activities you need to be doing for 95% of your time. Then maybe you get to a milestone of 100,000, 500,000 in revenue. Now you're taking that 95% and you're saying, okay, 80% of my time is going to be continuing to try to drive this revenue number, and then 10 or 20% of my time is going to be working on the business. How do I create repeatable routines around all of these tasks I'm doing? And then as time goes on, now you have time to work on the on yourself aspect of it. And so, okay, now I'm going to take 4 hours a week, Sunday afternoon. Right now I'm struggling with I'm struggling with employee training. And I'm going to read every book, every online class, every YouTube interview that I can get around creating an online training process. And how do I become the best coach that I can be to grow people around me? And because you're not a good coach at these things, you're not born to be able to do that. You have to learn how to do that. And so as time goes on, you shift the spectrum of how you're spending your time to be less in it, more on it, and more on yourself. And you kind of earn that as you work through levels of this game, to where maybe you get to level 10, and now guess what? 5% of your time is in the business. And then the rest of your week is spent on these higher leverage things, like working on yourself and working on the systems and processes in the business.
Yeah, so that simplifies things really well. And so in the inception days, trying to get the business off the ground, you're concentrating on working in the business, generating or getting the business up to a certain income goal. And then you can start pulling back from there and start working on the business more, and then into leadership. So I definitely appreciate you offering that insight. So if I could, let's bring things up to the subject of scaling. And so you've been acquired before. You have started your landscaping company. You were able to exit it for $10 million bucks. So you know all about the scaling process. So just kind of shine some light on how you went about scaling within your business.
Yeah, it's a never-ending commitment to building good, tight systems within your company, within your business, to where it can run without you. Because until truly you can leave for a month and come back and the business still be in place, matter of fact, it should be better. Then you don't have a business asset. You're just self-employed. So until you reach that point, you need to be driving towards why it, fixing the things that are causing it not to be that way. And it could be anything around getting people to show up, on time to do a good job for your customers. It could be we don't have enough customers. It could be we have plenty of customers and plenty of helpers, but we never have any money in the bank. Whatever the problem is, you have to really get to the root cause of why that problem exists in your business and then building a system around it. And the way I like to think about it is we ask why 5 times. This is a Toyota manufacturing methodology. It's called the 5 whys. And so it could be any problem you're facing in your business. It could be, okay, Johnny didn't show up to work today. Well, why didn't he show up to work? Well, because he's just burnt out and he doesn't want to work here anymore. Okay, well, why is that? Well, because last week he had to pick up an extra shift and he worked 7 days last week, and he's just fed up with it. He doesn't want to keep coming back. Okay, well, why did he have to pick up an extra shift? Well, because we had somebody get injured last week and they were out for a month. Well, why did they get injured? Well, because they didn't know how to use this piece of machinery this way, and they skinned their arm up pretty bad. Well, okay, so we have a employee safety training problem. There's actually the problem, and we need to fix that. Let's get that fixed. Let's spend a month working on that one problem. And now guess what? We don't have to face that anymore. And then so the problem was not actually anything other than an employee training problem around safety. And then that's just one of a million things that you'll have to fix in your business. Versus a self-employed person working in the business is just like, okay, Johnny didn't show up. We got to go find somebody else. Let's put an ad on Indeed.com or whatever, and let's go find somebody else. And you just you're in this hamster wheel for a million things going wrong at all times. So you have to ask why 5 times and fix it at the root cause, and then be willing to do that thousands of times over and over and over again until you've actually built a well-humming machine around you.
Okay. So prior to the scaling period, when you're in the early stages, in the founding stages, in the startup stages, do you think you should put systems in place down in that that area or that part of the business, or is it just scramble, a mad dash, and then once you hit the income, then you put systems around things?
Yeah, it is. It's almost like we think about this at GreenPal, especially in the early days. It is like a battlefield hospital tent, if you can think of it that way. If you can think of like a hospital tent in World War I or World War II, and what like the chaos that must have been going on inside of that tent. And you are like a medic, and you are doing something called triaging, which is just because it's not a first come first serve. It's not a first come first serve system. It's like who is in dire need the most at that moment, and let's tend to that. And so that's what you're doing in your business. You are working through the highest leverage, highest priority, highest impact issues that you're dealing with on a daily basis, and then you're getting at the root cause of those, and you are fixing those maybe 1 a week, maybe 2 a month. This is a slow process. This is why franchises are so valuable, by the way, because franchises have spent 10 years fixing all of these things already, and they're selling you that in a box, and that's why they're asking for 10% of your royalties, or 10% royalty for all of your revenue. It's because they already spent a decade or 2 fixing these things. Well, you as a new business owner, you don't have that system. You have to develop those from the ground up. And sure, you can learn from others to do it quicker, but it still takes time. And so you very much are triaging around, these are the biggest problems that we're facing this week. Let's fix them at the root cause and then move on to the next 3 or 4 problems.
Got it. Okay. So just hindsight looking back, you got acquired once. You are in the middle of a really robust company. You guys are doing really good volume and gross sales. and I'm sure profit margins are amazing. Looking back at all that you've learned now, and has you went through an exit already. Would you had started the business off a different way, as far as like putting processes in place from the start, or do you have any regrets on how you built the business that got acquired, and is there any difference between the business that you're building currently?
It's a great question. You would always do things a little differently. And the one thing I would do different was that I built my first landscaping business as a lifestyle business, meaning the people that worked for me were like family members. I tried to treat them like family. It afforded me a very good, comfortable lifestyle. I would go on vacation and expense the majority of it through the company because I was doing a little bit of business on the vacation. All of these like kind of things that go along with like the perks of running a small business, I was doing those things. That is a very different approach to running your business versus the approach you need to be running if you want to sell your company. Because the way you build a business as a lifestyle business versus the way you build a business to sell and exit are totally different. And so I wish I had worked a proactive 5 or 10-year plan to build the company to sell, because I didn't anticipate selling it. It just kind of hit me one day that I had plateaued from a personal development standpoint, and I wanted to create the space to do something else with my life. And from the moment that I had that kind of epiphany to getting that deal done was a little over 2 years. So it was 2 years of taking the business down to the studs and rebuilding it to a company that was viable for acquisition. And so if you ever dream of maybe selling your business, you need to start like today, building your business in a way that it is acquirable. And there's a great book about this called Built to Sell that talks about how you think about these things. And I wish I had that book. I didn't. It came out after I sold the company, but I wish I was more intentional about that.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Yeah. And that's the beauty of reading and staying educated, staying up to speed on the different things that's going on and following great thought leaders, because there's just some absolute amazing individuals out that they've done it. They've been there. They've done that. And they're offering you a really consolidated overview of exactly what it is that you need to know. And so you have to stay educating. You have to stay going to YouTube conferences, reading, etc., and just being around the right type of people. So that's great information.
Yeah, that is the work on yourself bucket. You got to set aside time. Okay, I want to sell my business. Well, I don't know how to do that. I need to work on myself so I know how to do that. You have to set aside time on the work on yourself bucket, one day a week at least, or else you'll never be in a position to get to that next level, which level 10, the Bowser level might be the acquisition of your company. And that final boss, Bowser, is the closing of that sale. That's a good way to think about it in a way. And it's like, okay, I don't know how to beat Bowser. Let me read every book I can get my hands on how to beat Bowser.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. So if we could just share a little bit of exactly what it is that you guys do today. And so you've got an outstanding app that you guys run. You're making it really streamlined to be able to offer landscaping on demand. Just kind of share exactly what it is that you guys do, and whereabouts are you guys able to provide services within the country?
Yeah. So sold the landscaping company, and I had an idea about a year later. I thought, somebody should build an app that works like Uber does, but for lawn care services, for landscape maintenance services. And I called it GreenPal, and just started working on the idea of, okay, how would it look? What would it look like? And how would it work? And my co-founder and I taught ourselves how to build software, and we just built the first website, built the first mobile app, slowly started getting people to use it. And now today, GreenPal nationwide in the United States is the largest network of lawn care services that you can just order from your smartphone, kind of like ordering on DoorDash or Instacart. or Uber, but for lawn mowing services. And so around 300,000 people using it every week. And if you need to get a lawn mowing service rather than calling around on Facebook or Craigslist or something, you just download GreenPal, you pop your address in, and 3 or 4 lawn mowing services will give you a price. You can hire one, they come out and do it. And then if you like it, you can push a button and they come out every week.
Wow, that's amazing. And so what all states are you guys in, or are you guys not working in certain areas of the country, or is it everywhere? Is it nationwide? Oh, okay, sweet. Wow.
Yeah, nationwide. Any city in the United States with over 10, 15,000 people, we have liquidity, and that means like there's lawn care services that are using the platform, and then you can order them right off the app. And we want to be in Canada soon. We're working through the logistics of internationalizing the business, and it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But that's the next step. Maybe that's like level 5 for us.
Okay. And so, how has AI it affected you guys, or how has it helped you guys? Do you guys leverage that much? I mean, this is an app. How have you guys been leveraging AI?
Yeah, the way we think about it is like, what does GreenPal do, and the problems it solves, and then what does magic look like? like magic would be, I just wish somebody would come mow my yard right now, and like they were just sitting out front of my driveway, and they would just mow my yard right now for $10. That would be magic. And then GreenPal can help you get somebody to come do it this afternoon. You can get you prices. It can make it to where you don't have to make a phone call. And it's pretty damn good, but it ain't magic. And how do we close the gap between what we do and what magic looks like? And with AI, we can now do that. We can think through all of the little systems, processes that take time, that sometimes don't work, that require a little bit of friction. They require a little bit of headache on the behalf of the user on either side of the transaction. And how do we streamline those things? And how do we predict outcomes and eliminate bad outcomes? Like, okay, I hired a guy, but he didn't show up. How do we prevent that from happening in the future? And how do we predict when it's going to happen, and then eliminate it before it does happen? And with AI, we can now execute at that level where we're doing things that we never could do before. And our team has always been a good team, but now with AI, it's a great team. It's like the people that the engineers and developers that work for a Facebook or a Google, if they're over here and we were here, now we're getting closer to their level now with AI tools. And every business owner needs to be thinking about, okay, how do I use these tools to level me up as a founder and level my team up and take us from good to great?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think AI is a great tool to use. It's not the solution to everything that you'll ever go through, but it just helps you. It cuts down processes and a lot of the time that you would have to get to a final solution. It really, so it shortens that gap there. Maybe to the tune of 50%, or it'll do 50% of the work or 70% of the work, but it always needs a little assistance to stay on the rails. And so,
the way I've heard it explained to me, and the way I like to think about it is a lot of people use AI, get frustrated, and like set it down because they think it's an end-to-end solution, meaning like you just one-shot it. Hey, this ain't working, go fix it. And it's like, it doesn't have the access. It doesn't know what you're doing. It doesn't know the context, and it doesn't know what success looks like. And like, it just, the output is doesn't solve a problem for you. It's not end to end. It is middle to middle. And so what I mean by that is like, okay, hey, this is the situation. Here's all of the context. Here's all of the data. Here's all the information. And I want you to think of like that you are my assistant that went to Harvard and studied mathematics and can understand how to work through all of the computations to solve this. And I want you to get me to a point where I can take it to the customer and help fix their problem. And so you started, you gave it everything, middle to middle. It got you on the goal line, and then now you take it and then you go present it to the customer, or you solve the customer's problem with it, or you implement it in your business, and you You do the hard work of getting it across the goal line. So it's like you have to start it and you have to finish it, but it can help you almost like a team get through that middle part.
Exactly. So are you guys using ChatGPT? And a second question on that is, have you been able to cut some expenses due to AI, or is everything still running pretty much the same?
Everybody says and is worried about how AI is going to cause people to lose their jobs. For us, we're doing more than we ever have because, yeah, and to your initial question, yeah, we primarily rely on ChatGPT, although Gemini is getting a lot better and it's cheaper. But I pay for the $200 a month ChatGPT for the majority of our staff because it in my opinion does a better job of getting to understand and predict what your needs are, and like they have a product called Pulse, and it sends you a push notification every day, and it kind of tells you like, hey, we talked about these 10 things last week, and here's 4 or 5 things you should think about. I went and researched them, and man, it's just amazing. It's almost like my assistant that's $200 a month. It's just incredible. And so you would think like this would gut the business and would allow us to like get rid of all kinds of engineers and content writers and software developers. But the reality is we're hiring more because now ChatGPT and AI tools, they lower the barrier between like idea in my head and execution. And it's like, now it's like, okay, I want to do all these other things because they're now more within reach. They're now more within, they're more within grasp. And so now I don't have to think through all of that messy middle. I like, here's the idea, make me a plan. Okay, let's go execute the plan. And so we're doing more than we ever have. And so as a result, we're hiring more, we're spending more money, but we're making more money. So it has been a big productivity boost for us.
Wow. Okay. So instead of cutting staff, you guys are generating more income. Okay, sweet. Yeah. So that, I mean, it kind of goes different ways depending on who it is that the business that you're operating and who the operator is, the business owner is, because I've been able to cut some expenses and step away from some production type of people, virtual assistants, because a lot of it's more informational type of things, and I can rely on a lot of the things that Chat GPT does, and it saves me just a little bit of cash. So that's really good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can save a lot of money on routine, repetitive stuff, and you should be doing that. My point is that once you have that done, it also helps you grow and do more and do things you weren't doing beforehand. And it breaks down the barrier between where you're at today and this new thing that you want to do, and you kind of always had it in the back of your mind. With ChatGPT, it can break down the barriers to like idea to getting started. And as a result, now you're hiring new people, or maybe you're people that you were going to lay off. You've upskilled them and they're doing these new things. But you should definitely, the first stop should be, what does all the paperwork BS look like? The email tickets, a lot of customer service, a lot of content writing, a lot of the routine, repetitive bean counting can just be abstracted away with these tools. And that definitely should be done day one.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, one last question before we move into our coaching round is, so you operated a service-based business, and so to speak, it almost sounds like this is a service-based business, but maybe it's in a marketplace, more geared towards a marketplace. You would have to share that with me, but between the two businesses, you had the service in which you started working in the business and eventually scaled it. And now you've got a platform in which people can enter in their information and have someone come and service them. Between those type of businesses, do you think those are different businesses, or which one would you prefer? And what's kind of the pros and the cons between those two?
Yeah. So the answer to your question is yes and no. So on the one end of your question is, are you in the lawn care business or are you not? And are you selling lawn care services, or are you building a marketplace? And a trap that a lot of new founders fall into in tech world is they think that because they are building the technology and building the marketplace, that a lot of the things that suck about that particular business no longer apply to them. But the reality is that gravity always is going to be there. And what I mean by that is, like, take Airbnb, for example. Let's say you book a spare bedroom on Airbnb, and you show up and the sheets weren't changed and they're dirty. That's not a technology problem. That's a customer experience problem. And like, you're mad at Airbnb about that. And you don't care how good the app was designed. You don't care how fast it loaded. You don't care how the back end was coded. All you care about is your sheets are dirty. So no matter what, Airbnb is always in the clean sheets business. It's just the way you solve that is very, very, very different. So in my first landscaping business, I had 150 employees, and it was like I was all over everything all the time. And so customer had a problem, and it didn't, it rose to me as the founder. I had to figure out what broke down in our systems, and how do we make sure we create incentives where employees don't create those problems within the company, and let's fix it there. Now with GreenPal, with hundreds of thousands of users using it every day and thousands of transactions, we are not the providers of lawn care services. We are just the platform that lawn care services use to sell their services. So now we have to solve problems from like one abstraction away deeper. And it's like, okay, how do we create a system with the right incentives and the right carrot and stick like tooling to make sure that the users of the platform won't skip the backyard if the gate is locked, or they will show up on Thursday when they're supposed to. And it's like, I can't tell them to show up on Thursday because I'm not their boss. And I can't make them do that, but I can create a system that says, hey, guess what? If you show up on time, your ratings go up. And if your ratings go up, you will get more business. You can charge a little bit more for your services. And so it's figuring out, okay, the human psychology that goes into using a platform like this, and how do we incentivize users of it to perform in a way that is better for them, better for customers, better for the platform. So you have to like think about it from like one layer away, versus when you're in a business doing lawn mowing services, you can just go right to the root cause. Hey, you didn't follow protocol. You didn't do this. You do that one more time, we're gonna have to replace you. And so it's a little different how you approach the problems, but the problems are still there.
Yeah, I love that. And so you guys truly are like the Uber of lawn care.
We are a technology company in our essence. Yeah, we are not a landscaping company, but that doesn't mean that landscaping problems still don't exist, and we have to figure out ways to solve them.
Exactly. Well, and then with your background, you owned a landscaping company, so you know the business inside and out. So you know how the contractors think, and you know what the customer is desiring. And so it's the perfect marriage. So I think you've got a really great thing going there. Hey, Brian, we're gonna turn the page here and start wrapping things up. We always like to offer our listeners some coaching advice from professionals such as yourselves. If you could just hold your response between 1 to 2 minutes per question, we'll get through this pretty quick as a rapid fire here. So the first question that I have for you is, what advice would you give to someone about personal development? Is there anything that you would highly recommend? I heard all throughout the conversation early on that you were a huge proponent of it. What would be your advice for a young founder pursuing personal development?
Yeah, 2 quick tips. One, a lot of personal development can like, what does that even mean? And it could get lost into this world of Tony Robbins land, which I like Tony Robbins, but the reality is going to a Tony Robbins seminar is you're not going to learn a whole lot about how to grow your specific business. And so thinking about personal development is two things. You first, you need to be setting aside time for it on a weekly basis. It's that on yourself bucket we talked about earlier. You have to set aside time to read the books, listen to the podcasts, go to YouTube University. The second thing is personal development should almost be like that hospital tent we talked about where you're triaging. Personal development should be that. It is block and tackling for whatever it is that is a choke point in your business at that given time. So let's say you for the first time you are now running advertising and you want, you did cold calls, you passed out flyers, you got your first 100 customers. Now you want to develop a system around marketing. Well, now you have to become a marketer. Well, I didn't go to school for marketing. That doesn't matter. You have to become a marketer, and you have to do the personal development of becoming a good copywriter, becoming a decent ad designer, and running these things yourself. And that's how you develop those skills. So it's not like, okay, I listened to a Tony Robbins clip on Instagram Reels, personal development check. No, it's like, okay, I took this course on how to really do A/B testing on Facebook ads, and I'm a little bit better at that. And so that's what personal development is.
Okay. Yeah, I love that approach to actually go after things that you're needing in the moment rather than just collecting a bunch of information that really doesn't apply to the moment. And so that's great. So the next question is, what is the most valuable skill a person should develop, based off of your opinion, in order to be successful in business?
I think it's sales, but even more than sales, it's a bias towards action. So a lot of people that are really good at sales, they just have a bias towards action. It's like, okay, we gotta close 5 deals this week. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, that means we got to talk to 100 people per day. Well, let's start going down that list and let's do it. And it's like you have to develop that. You have to reduce the resistance in your brain to what's blocking you from taking action. So sales and having a bias towards action in my head kind of go in the same conversation. And so if you can develop the sales acumen and develop that kind of muscle memory and develop that habit in your life, I think it can help you grow your business. If you're not good at sales, you're not willing to do those types of activities, growing any business is going to be really tough.
Yeah, so sales is the machine that makes everything go because it's income. You have to generate income. You have to market. You have to be able to get people into the front door in order to fund the business and keep you going and keeping you growing. So great recommendation. The final question I have for you is, if a person was starting a business with no money, what would you recommend for them to do? And so that's been quite some time ago for you. I know you started off and you were a younger person when you first got started in the business, but you didn't really have a ton to go off of. Great that the overhead was extremely low to start, mowing lawns and things like that. But for the person that's an entrepreneur or that's considering being an entrepreneur, but they're just short on cash, what would you recommend for them to be able to do?
First thing I would do is I would audit my personal expenses. So it's like Mark Cuban said, the least you can live on, the greater your options as a founder. So what do you need to take to survive? Like that number needs to be really low because if it's not, then your business has to service that overhead just for you to stay afloat. And so let's reduce that to the lowest amount we can. Maybe that's like level 0.5 of the game. Like that's the levels before we even start the game. So let's clean that up. Could be personal credit cards, could be car loans, could be bad debt. It could be apartment too big, house too big, whatever. That number needs to be the lowest it can possibly be. And then the next thing I would do is I would figure out, okay, how do I still work my full-time job and then spend nights and weekends working this other job or this other small business idea? And how do I hustle up my first 10 customers? And I wouldn't worry about anything other than getting 10 customers. And you might say, well, I don't have the product. I don't have the thing. It's like you can hand crank whatever it is that you're selling in 90% of the use cases. And so that's how I would think about it. If I couldn't get to 10 customers, then I wouldn't continue down this path. And then the next thing is like, don't start any business that you are not willing to run for a decade of your life. A lot of times new founders, new entrepreneurs will like get into this mindset that this is only going to be a 1 or 2 year or 3 year thing. And that's never the case. It's always a decade. So be thinking about that. And so at a tactical level, it's like audit your personal finances and then clear everything off your plate other than just getting your first 5 or 10 customers for whatever it is you're doing. If you're not willing to do those things, then the life of an entrepreneur probably is not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I tell my wife that all the time, that I strap in for easily 10 years. And so not that I want to just spin my wheels for 10 years and not make any income along the way, but you have to be a long-term thinker, because if you don't, entrepreneurship, it can eat you alive because it goes in cycles. Sometimes months are a lot better than others. Years are a lot better than others. There's some setbacks along the way. And so you have to strap in and be ready. Yeah, and be ready to just kind of weather the storm. And so it's similar to what Elon Musk said. Operating a business is similar to just staring out into the beautiful ocean while chewing broken glass. And so you just got so many things that's coming your way, and issues galore. So you have to be ready to go for it. So yeah, that's great advice. Hey, before we let you go, if you could share a great thought leader that you follow or that you would recommend for other founders to follow. It could be someone that you recommend, or someone that you would recommend for another person to follow.
Yeah, I like this guy. His name's Dan Martell. He's really good. He talks a lot about how to use AI in your small business or in your career. That's really all he's been talking about lately. And he's very practical and tactical in terms of like, okay, here's how you use it for this thing. So he's really good. And I think no matter who you're following, like in terms of thought leadership, you need to be like moving around and following people who are tackling the things that you are struggling with at that moment at like a hands-on level. Because there's just so much high level really noise out there that none of it can really help you, and none of it's going to help you move the needle. The Tony Robbins stuff, and I'm not knocking Tony Robbins, but I love Tony Robbins. But like that high level of like abstract advice that is not going to help you with the nuts and bolts of your business at that moment is almost a waste of time. It's kind of like entertainment. Whereas, like this guy, Dan Martell, he's talking about like, hey, here's how you use AI to supercharge X, Y, and Z. And so that's a guy that I like a lot.
He's not coming to mind right now, but I heard Dan Martell's story on his podcast. And he came from very humble beginnings, and so he really did. And then he just took the bull by the horns and just never looked back. So yeah, he's got some really great content. Hey, Brian, we want to thank you for coming on to the show. You've been a wealth of knowledge, taking us all the way back to Dad, pushing you out the front door, making you mow some lawns, and to you starting a full-scale landscaping company in which you were eventually able to exit. And so, and then even sharing with us today how you're operating this app that's really revolutionizing the landscaping market. Let's say someone listening to this episode decided that they wanted to reach out to you and connect. What would be a good way for them to be able to do so?
Yeah, anybody want to hit me up, just Google my name, Brian Clayton, and then maybe you can throw GreenPal on the end of it, and you'll find me. Just hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram. Just drop me a DM there. Anybody want to try GreenPal out, just go to greenpal.com.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Brian, once again, thanks for coming on to the show. We'd love to have you back anytime.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you having me on.